if Lucius Aelius Sejanus, prefect of the Praetorian Guard, had ever entertained the idea of an alliance with Agrippina, whose sons had as much to lose as he did from the impending principate of Castor, that fleeting opportunity vanished as soon as it arrived. Drusus Julius Caesar, the Senate-appointed successor to Rome's legions, died. With the death of Tiberius's son, Agrippina, now clad once more in mourning for her brother-in-law, was no longer eligible for marriage. A pity, then, that Sejanus had divorced his wife Apicata just before Castor died. His former father-in-law was none too pleased either. Angry and offended at the return of his daughter for no apparent reason, Marcus Gavius Apicius now worked to discredit Sejanus's growing name, spreading rumors that Apicius had pimped Sejanus out for money to all his rich friends when he was still young. But such was the expected reaction from the family of a spurned wife, and Sejanus could live with it. His real problem was that Tiberius and Agrippina had reconciled, at least for the moment. Now the father of the nation's gaze fell on Nero and Drusus Caesar. But, by adopting the sons of Agrippina as his own, Tiberius's own grandson, the 4-year-old Gemellus, was all but removed from the line of succession, a situation Sejanus doubted would make Castor's widow Livilla very happy. But why, after 5 years of insinuations that Tiberius had been involved in the death of Germanicus, did he suddenly reconcile with the very woman who had stoked those feelings? Perhaps it was Tiberius who needed Agrippina more than she needed him. The mother of Nero and Drusus had the support of the Roman people and the respect of the legions along the Rhine. Even the Senate was turning back to the House of Germanicus. With support suddenly galvanized behind Agrippina's sons like a unified political party, what choice did Tiberius really have? To appease this new party of Agrippina, Tiberius could do nothing but adopt Nero and Drusus Caesar. But Agrippina wasn't the only representative of the House of Germanicus. There was also Claudius, Germanicus's brother. Sejanus had already negotiated a marriage alliance with Claudius through the betrothal of their children. And though the untimely death of Claudius's son had shattered that potential union, there were still other marriages Sejanus could attempt to broker. The sun had not yet risen when Sejanus was forced to rouse Tiberius from his sleep. An incident, a terrible crime had occurred, and Tiberius was needed at once, for the terrible crime touched upon his own family. By the time Sejanus and a few guards escorted Tiberius to the crime scene, the sun was just breaching the horizon. Sejanus pounded on the door of the wealthy villa, after which he and Tiberius were admitted into the home of Marcus Plautius Silvanus. Silvanus was the son of the Marcus Plautius Silvanus who had fought alongside Tiberius during the Bellum Battonianum, where he was highly decorated and enjoyed distinction during Tiberius's triumph. Silvanus's grandmother, Plautia Urgulania, was a long-time close and personal friend of Tiberius's mother, the Augusta, and his sister, Plautia Urgulanilla, was the wife of Tiberius's nephew, Claudius. At the bottom of the stairway leading to the upper levels of the villa, Silvanus, flanked by 2 Praetorian soldiers, sat in his nightshirt. With his head in his hands, Silvanus kept repeating to anyone who would listen that he had been asleep, that he knew nothing of what happened. Leading Tiberius past Silvanus and to the upper levels, Sejanus stopped in one of the sleeping cubicles. Tiberius examined the room. Oil lamps were knocked over and shattered on the ground. The rug was twisted, the bed-sheets torn and dragged halfway off the bed. Then Sejanus brought Tiberius to the window. Far below lay the broken body of a woman, Silvanus's wife, Apronia. "What happened here?" Tiberius asked. Sejanus shook his head. "He claims he heard nothing, slept through it all. But this incident was more than a domestic dispute gone wrong. There were political overtones. Apronia, who had been married to Silvanus for less than a year, was the daughter of Lucius Apronius, a man who had earned his military valor alongside Germanicus and Gaius Silius during the conquest of Germania. Apronia's great-aunt, Claudia Pulchra, was the widow of Varus, whom the conquest of Germania avenged, and she was a dear friend to Agrippina. Silvanus's first wife, Fabia Numantina, whom he callously divorced to marry Apronia during the cultural shift back to the House of Germanicus, was angry, and she was suspected of delving in witchcraft. To complicate matters even further, Numantina had been very close with Silvanus's sister, Urgulanilla, who, out of loyalty to Numantina, had shown nothing but disdain for her brother's new wife from the moment they married. It was clear to Tiberius that there had been a struggle. Even though the crime took place in Apronia's room, how could someone sleep through the crashing of lamps and the screams of a woman being dragged to the window? It had to be magic, Silvanus insisted. There was no other explanation for why he could remember nothing. Perhaps Numantina used some sort of charm on him, something to make him kill his wife, whom she and his sister both despised. Of course, Tiberius ordered a trial to be held in the Senate, but Silvanus, still blaming Numantina for the death of his wife, took his own life with a dagger sent to him by his own grandmother. Numantina, accused of witchcraft, was tried in turn. Yet with no proof of her involvement, she was acquitted. Because of the growing suspicion that Urgulanilla might have played a role in Apronia's murder, Claudius divorced her, not for the scandal, but for adultery. He claimed that their daughter, born recently, was the offspring of Urgulanilla's freedman, Bota. Claudius sent the infant girl, named Antonia, and had her laid at the steps of Urgulanilla's new home. Once again, the fates had provided an opportunity for Sejanus to formally align himself with the House of Germanicus. Claudius was free to marry. And so Sejanus negotiated another alliance with Claudius. This time he offered his sister, Aelia Paetina. From the moment Claudius married Aelia, the House of Germanicus was divided. Now the people of Rome, the legions on the Rhine, and even the Senate had a choice. They could support the party of Agrippina, or they could support the party of Sejanus, the party that came with the protection of the emperor's own Praetorian Guard. But the division was not yet complete. The support of Agrippina's faction, Gaius Silius and Lucius Apronius, both with military clout, and Titus Sabinus, a steadfast and incorruptible senator, was formidable. It was too strong for Agrippina to be easily removed. The better strategy for now was to weaken her support, to thin her ranks, before making any direct moves. And so, Gaius Silius, the man who had just quelled the rebellion in Gaul, was accused of treason by Lucius Vicelius Varro, a senator whose father had been sidelined in favor of Silius's command against the rebels. Varro claimed that Silius had misappropriated funds in league with Sacrovir and Floris. He argued that Silius's motive was to fund the rebellion deliberately, creating the necessary unrest to destabilize Rome and forcibly unseat Tiberius. But Gaius Silius refused to enter a plea, nor did he defend himself. He merely let the Senate know that Tiberius would have already been unseated had he not kept his legions from avenging the death of Germanicus. Gaius Silius then went home and opened a vein. Already, the division within the House of Germanicus began to shift. The party of Agrippina had suffered its first loss. One by one her allies would fall away, and Agrippina would be left alone, while Sejanus, just promoted to the Senate by Tiberius himself, would turn his attention towards another imperial widow.